Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button, and I'm a granite sculptor. Welcome to video number 72 of the virtual stone carving apprenticeship. Okay, we've had a little bit of a change, industry level change, just within the last couple of weeks, and I want to make sure to tell you all about it. During my apprenticeship, I got two brand new hand machines. Okay, that's what I got. The program paid for tools, and I got two new hand machines. That's all I had. When I opened my studio was two hand machines. And this is a trowel and Holden 3/4 inch D full stroke hand machine. It's the tapered couture type profile that they work, but I like a fingertip style better. This is a Bicknell, and Bicknell was out of Rockland, Maine, and that changed in around 96, and they closed down their manufacturing plant, and everything was reverted to their retail store in Elberton called Bicknell Supply versus Bicknell Manufacturing. But they still had their hand machines produced in this fingertip style. The old ones were always reputed to be a better machine to carve with than the trowel and Holdens. They had a different feel, and that may have been local legend, but they feel different, and they're really nice to carve with. But the new machines are more like a trowel and Holden in terms of performance, but trowel and Holden 3/4 machines are shaped like this. They don't have the fingertip style that I like, where it's easy to just hold the machine like that while you're carving. So a couple weeks ago, it was announced that Miles Supply had purchased Bicknell. Bicknell's gone. There's no more Bicknell Supply Company or Bicknell Manufacturing. Bicknell's done. It's passed on to the other side. I called up and talked with a couple people, talked with Larry and talked to Frank. One was at Bicknell, one was at Miles, and Frank did some calls and assured me that they're going to continue to offer these machines for sale. I called because I was going to buy a couple of them. If they weren't going to make these anymore, I want to make sure I had some. And he says they plan to keep anything that Bicknell sold as long as it continues to sell. And even if they don't have them in stock, it might be something we got to wait a couple weeks for them to actually get new ones made and whatever. So as long as you're still interested in buying them, they're still available. They're available through Miles Supply now. I don't know if they're going to say Miles Supply or Bicknell Supply. That wasn't something that was clarified yet, but it wouldn't surprise me if it changes and says Miles Supply on there. But as I know more, I'll tell you. But this is what I prefer to carve with, simply because it's more comfortable, more tractable to hold, and performs just like a trowel and Holden machine. But I like this shape better. So, I changed the contact information in my description, where I've got links now to Miles Supply, and they're great to deal with. I bought all my diamond blades from Miles forever. The only diamond blades I use otherwise are ones that I get in buyouts when I buy out a bunch of tools, and there's a few in there, and I just try to use them up because I'm cheap. But the disco blades, Miles Supply, and now these good hand machines are going to be through Miles Supply. So just wanted to keep y'all updated on what's going on in the industry, because things keep changing. So well, let's get back to cutting this stone. I'm going to lay this out, mark this up with some red pencil, and just do some scraping while the light's really muted. It's overcast today. The light is fantastic, and so sitting up here by the door, it's just really tough because the light gets really tough. So I'm going to mark this up and just do some scraping. So not much to see, pretty boring stuff. Then we'll start pitching this stone. Let's get to work. One really important reason I want to mention this specifically. When I tell you to develop this line by developing these two flats, this flat and this flat, and that'll create a line where they meet. If you take a chisel and you cut that line in hard before that line's where you want it to be, you're invariably going to leave a stone or a line along that where you marked it, because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to cut that line. Just like when I talk, because we're going to stun a line like that in order to make this break when we chip it, so we get a good break. The problem is if you cut that line in before you've got it in the right place, and you could end up having a big stun that's 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch or whatever from where it needs to be, and you're not going to be able to clean it up without pushing this entire line back or down to a different position. So that's part of learning how to use your tools towards your benefit versus creating another problem. You can erode something and leave a feature in place, create it by leaving something in place instead of cutting it specifically and stabbing it in there and cutting that line in, which is really easy and really tempting to do. It's a really big mistake a lot of the time, so don't do it. Develop it, and once everything's right, we check this with a straight edge and all is good, then we go down and put our good stun in there as a stress riser so we can have it there when we break it. Okay, back to work. I got that front line wrapped up. Went down and put a real hard line just with a chisel all the way down and went all the way around the ends to start my check. Got this other end done too. Now we're going to start working on breaking this. I'm going to go ahead and we'll saw in about here. Just run a line straight down. Doesn't have to be perfect. The idea is we just want a nice flat line for the handset to sit on to break to. Then we'll have to pitch it and drive this corner in to mark a line on the corner. Now we got to be really careful over here because this is probably going to let loose, and I'd rather not have that collapse and fall off, and especially to go back in here. You know, if it's a real problem, we may have to shorten this up a little bit and go in a little bit more. I'm going to take the saw and just try to flatten this up so we can break this in really hard here with the handset first to break that in, and just to make it work. And it's either going to work great or it's going to be a bad day, and we're going to find out. Give this a shot. Turn the stone. This is that spot we don't like. Mark the line, approximate line where we're going to end up. Sawed this off just to get some flat so I can break on it. And we'll see how this breaks. Wow, check that out. Now it'll be smart to break up from the bottom. Move the camera back a little bit. Corner after all. now that we know if that corner is going to be good, I'm going to turn this over and lay this out. We'll break along this joint, mark this all up. We got this edge done, we'll mark these other three. We're going to go ahead and turn it. I may have to turn it back to continue breaking it. But this is pretty great. We got a big chunk off of there. This should come off pretty good right here. Without a big failure. Yeah, see that? We won't have a big hump in. That'll be real pretty. We cut this back. We can chip this off really nice. Have a really good job. Yeah, this is coming out really well. All right, I'm gonna turn this over and we'll lay the bottom out. Before we lay it down, we're gonna transfer a couple of the center lines so we can map the bottom in terms of the top. What I'm doing to transfer these lines, I took my tape measure, and I took my good carpenter square. I squared it against the face of the stone where we got the two center lines because we hadn't marked anything on the joint yet. Okay? So I put this on the face, turn it around so it makes more sense. Put it on the face, and I measured from this interior edge that was resting on the stone wherever it hits to the center line. And then I could take, as long as it was against that flat face, because this is parallel, I could go over and I could measure on this side to see how far down I needed to go to mark my line. I did that on both ends, marked the middle, struck a line. Now I'm going to take the same straight edge, and I'm going to go square on the face here and mark down for my edges, you know, on the front two corners, strike a line for this end. And I'll go ahead and do this one while y'all are watching. If you can see, I'll line this up. Put my mark right there. Then because I've got this straight edge, this center line, I can put my square on that line. Get the interior marked right, match it up. And then I can mark my line. And then you can drop this in order to carry the line to the bottom. And for the bottom edge, because it's flat, we can kind of cheat. We know we got to go up. You know, we went in 2 inches or whatever. We'll measure it on each end. We'll just measure up and make sure we're at the 2 inches. We'll put a mark there and a mark there. Put a stripe right down and put a mark on the center line right here and mark it down. And that gives us a place to break to. And probably what we'll do next is we'll turn it up on the upside down completely. And I'll go around and I'll break this whole edge in from the bottom, break the joint. Because that's the safe way to do it. I had to be really careful doing this first break, because it was holding, I hit it, and it was breaking and it was staying up above. You generally go in from the bottom, but I was really worried about this corner with the inclusions. So this should break off great. We just have to lay into it, break it like you're supposed to break it. So let's move the stone a little bit and we'll be right back. All right, let's see if we can break this end off or not.
Work alone, you gotta have some way to hold this straight edge. Get you some deep bar clamps. The length isn't the big issue, it's the depth. You gotta have something long enough to reach around, you know, stuff that's odd, so you can get a good hold. And we'll go in and we'll chip this edge off. Got a nice straight edge. So, where this is broken like it is, you've got some crack, you're just going to go anywhere near halfway here. I'll break this end in, drive this in after you break the front off. I'll break that off really well so that it's going to lead that into here. When you turn this over, oil will lay into that budget. Remember, we've got 3 inches here. We got a lot of room. We ought to be able to really get on that hard. We've got a crack right there. But I think if we push this really hard, it'll soften that a little bit. And I'll probably I may point that off. We'll look and see. But we'll try to break this off and make this vulnerable. We'll break it really hard. And hopefully we won't have to point that all off with a hand point to clear it off. Let's see how it goes. I'm going to start down this other side. Let's take a look at where we're at. Okay, this was the end we were worried about. This has got 3 inches on the bottom to break in. So we've already got a fracture starting here. We broke this in. This has to be pushed back. We have to pitch a straight line down here. And we say pitch a line, we'll put a chisel, a pitching tool, we'll hit it this way and we'll hit it this way to cut a line. Now some people just take a saw and just saw a line in there and break to it. Yeah, we ain't gonna do that if we don't have to. That's a crutch, man. So, but if you, let's back up. You look at that end, most of this broke halfway. Got one big hump right there, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna leave this for right now. I'm gonna break that other end in, like I broke this in, to relieve this hump. And then we're gonna try, we gotta just make a decision. Probably hit this and try to break that off to point with something else. I'll put a tool on there and we'll hit that thing like we're gonna die. And try to get that hump broken off, because that's kind of isolated. That'll probably loosen this, but I'm concerned if I hit that first. I've still got about an inch right there, and so I got to decide. Over here, what I want to do is I want to get rid of that end, break this end in right here. I'll break this. I'll hit this with a handset to blow this out, to try to release any stability on that, and to try to eliminate some mass here, because then when I hit this really hard here, all of the energy will go into this isolated piece and hopefully clear it and lift it off. That'll break off, that'll break off. Probably this will all go without too much trouble, because that's the bad end. This is the face. You can see we got a couple spots here where it's going to be a long reach. I'm really going to have to hit it, but we'll do our best. You know, if we have to, we can cut this back another inch. We didn't go back to 3, we only went about just under 2 inches. So we've still got material there. If this is a real failure, we can still deal with it, but we should be able to clear that off. Once you start getting this end off to release this, it'll isolate energy in the hit and in the hit, and it's probably will break and clear out around there, and then we'll try to hit this, and now that if I'm going to have a spot, I bet it'll be right there. We should be able to get most of this cleared out. Down the rest of it, I don't think it'll hold too much. I think we'll be okay, because it was breaking pretty good on the other end. Down here, we just have to break this off. This is already rough, so as long as it doesn't break under, we're all set. So that end is chipped. This edge is chipped. Just turn around and straighten that line up. So we'll keep hitting it. When you got to do this, it's really important to put the stone in a position where you can really use every bit of energy and muscle you've got. A big hammer works. You know, if we had 2 people here, we could bull set this and with an 8-pound hammer and clear it all off and it'd come off without any trouble. You'd be more at risk of breaking through. With a 6-pound hammer, you really get a lot of stuff, because it's a lot more energy than hitting it with a 4-pound hammer, because the stone will hold and it'll isolate your energy in smaller areas and you won't get as good a break. So, but I think this is going to work pretty well. So let's keep cutting. I'm going to cut that end. Then I think I'm going to stand it up on edge and break this off, and then we'll flip it over and break it down from the bottom. We'll get this joint all straightened out. We'll turn it one more time. Turn it up on the side. Got this end broke in, about like I figured. You know, it held on right there, but see there's a line right there. So if we can initiate a good break here, that should carry most, if not all, that off. If it doesn't get all of it, that's high enough where I can work on it here, break it off, and then get rid of the marks. But the next thing to do, okay, I realize most people would just lay that down and flog on it and break all that stuff off. But in order to get a really good break with your hand set, you have to be able, you don't lay it on the stone flat. You want to be able to tip it. Instead of hitting like this, you hit with one edge of it. And I don't have any clearance right there. Well, I'm going to cut this off to make a scotia. So if I go ahead and cut this off, the reason I didn't cut that off first is that would, I'd lose mass up here, and that would weaken this and make it more likely for the break to carry so far that it went all the way up through and knocked off my line. Now it's time to turn this back regular, start all over again. We're going to mark our line up here, all the way around. We're going to mark our line on the top here. We're probably going to stand a little bit so I've got room to polish, because I got to polish this top. Go ahead and we'll cut the taper off, even if it's not the whole scotia. Then I can lay this tool in here and I can tip it like that. And that'll plow all that right off, and that'll blow that right off. So now you got to turn it and cut the bevel for the scotia and make some room to work. We should be able to finish this up. This is why I wanted to show you how to do a base like this. There's a lot to it. It isn't just a straightforward deal. And when you've got something this big and this consequential, you got to really plan on what you're doing. But we're going good. This couple, like this hump right here, that's really the only thing I'm worried about clearing. And I got enough underneath here that I'm sure I could put a flat on there and really hit it, and then come back and clean it right off. I think if we can get on it though and tip it up here, I'll get on there really hard and we'll push that, and that should break at least into here. But there's a line right there, and if I can carry that line and capture it, that'll come right off. It'll look great. All right, now it's time to cut the scotia. Got the base turned now, so we can get started on the scotia. We'll do that on, or at least the bevel for the scotia. We'll start that on the next video. This one's long enough. I hope you appreciate the process, because the process is what you need to understand. It isn't as obvious to get where you want to go sometimes cut stone. You can just take a tool and dive in and start hitting it, but if you plan it and schedule it and do things in order, you have a lot more control and you end up with a lot better result. So and then when it starts coming together like this, there's a lot of anxiety with how this stone's going to break and if we're going to have a nice pitch, nice rock pitch or rock face or whatever you call it. We call it rock pitch. That's what it's called. This is rock pitch. It's not shell rock pitch because you busted in curves. That's a different process. This is just regular rock pitch. And so in order to have this, you got to do a certain way now. We could have just run it into a big saw and run one big saw cut down here and one big saw cut down there. But you're going to find when you're doing sculpture work that you can't just put saw cuts where you want to do. You got to be able to do this by hand, and so I took this opportunity to show you how to do it by hand. We'll saw a lot of this off. This could just be cut with a bunch of lines and snap it, but you end up having digs that could ruin your scotia. So we'll be a lot more careful taking this off so that I don't have all those problems. But it's really feels great when it starts coming together. You hit that stone and it breaks the way you want it, and you just want to plow right through it. So get a big hammer and don't be afraid to swing it. Learn to do it. My name's Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor here at Carolina Sculpture Studio with the virtual stone carving apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.